Please be seated. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we're going to call the roll and get started. Bring Detective Gish back up, swear him in, and go from there. Madam Clerk.
Juror number 5. Here. Juror number 6. Here. Juror number 7. Here. Juror number 8. Here. Juror number 9. Here. Juror number 10. Here. Juror number 11. Here. Juror number 12. Here. Juror number 13. Here. And juror number 14. Here. All
right, everybody present. All right, swear in, Detective Gish.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
I believe when we left off yesterday, you were describing about going to California. Before you get to that, I want to go back to your previous testimony from yesterday. You had described that you analyzed 4 different phones, and we saw thumbnail images that you retrieved from 3 of those phones. Could you explain whether or not you are able to determine the phone number of a particular device when you do a forensic analysis?
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes we can. And on all of these phones, I either determined it through the extraction with the software, or it was self-reported by the person that gave the phone, one of the 2.
So did you have phone numbers identified with each of those 4 phones?
I did.
And do you have that information readily available?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Which I believe the first phone was Mr. Vandenburg's phone. Do you have a phone number identified with that phone?
Yes, Vandenburg's phone number was area code 760-285-4408.
And I believe the second phone was Mr. Batey's phone. Do you have a phone number identified with that?
I do. It's area code 615-485-7996.
And Mr. Banks's phone?
Mr. Banks is area code 240-229-2951.
And the fourth phone, Mr. McKenzie's phone, were you able to determine a phone number for that device?
Yeah, I was. McKenzie is area code 601-870-7069.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And again, you were explaining kind of at that point in the investigation what was going on, and that based on what you had found, that you and Detective Mayo had been sent to California. If you could just pick up there and finish describing what was going on at that time in the investigation.
Right. As I testified yesterday, we had a good idea of who these, the communication on these other phones, on Vandenburg's phone, who it was with. So we went out to California at a place called Palm Desert, which was east of Los Angeles. This was the hometown, I believe it was, of Brandon Vandenburg. And in our travels, we were interested in not only interviewing 2 of those individuals who we thought had communications during this time frame while the victim was in the room with the suspects, was a man named Miles Finley and a man named Joey Quiznio. Through investigation, we found out, even before we got to California, that these 2 individuals had played football, college football, at a junior college there in Palm Desert with Mr. Vandenburg. So we developed as much information as we could on these 2 individuals. And then we did arrive in California, and it was on July the 23rd of 2013. Once we got to California, we met basically an attaché police department there that knew we were coming. It was the Palm Desert Police Department. We met with the supervisor there. We briefed him on the case and what we had had thus far. Immediately, he signed about 7 detectives within his division to work with us. And when I say work with us, we had a couple of things that were primary that we wanted to do. The first thing we wanted to do, of course, would be interview these 2 individuals. And the second thing we wanted to do would be complete search warrants for these 2 individuals on any electronic devices that may be in their possession. So the following day, once we had our briefing at Palm Desert with Riverside County, we started conducting some surveillance on the individual's house, Mr. Finley and Mr. Quisneo, both of those. And then we were assisted in, Detective Mayo and I were both assisted in completing California search warrants to search the residence and the person of Mr. Quisneo, the residence and the person of Mr. Finley. And when we got there, we decided we would also apply for a third warrant, an additional warrant. And that warrant was going to be for the area of use in the football locker room at this college for Brandon Vandenburg. So on the 24th, the 23rd and the 24th, we conducted surveillance, completed these search warrants, met at length with a judge in California, ultimately was granted these 3 search warrants. And then I believe it was the following day that we started our investigation. We met early on the morning at Palm Desert Police Department there in Riverside. And the first location that we went to was Mr. Quisneo's house. So we arrived at his home with the officers that were assigned to us to help investigate, and we completed that search warrant. Mr. Quisneo was there. We interviewed Mr. Quisneo, and he was taken back to the Riverside County Police Department and questioned there. We completed the search warrant, and during the search warrant there at Mr. Quisneo's house, we recovered at least 2 iPhone devices. One was an iPhone 5, and I believe the other was an iPhone 4S.
Remember where you recovered those devices?
Yeah, one of them was in a vehicle outside in the driveway area of Quisneo's house, and I believe the iPhone 5 was in Quisneo's room. We also recovered a receipt, and at the time I didn't know that the receipt, and it was a receipt for an iPhone 5, and I believe the receipt was dated July the 7th off of July the 8th off of my memory of 2013.
If you'll wait just one moment, I have an item I would like to pass to you before you finish your testimony regarding the receipt.
Your Honor, at this time we'd like to offer an objection that, based on the relevance, another iPhone purchased by another individual that has no relationship to Mr. Batey. There's been no testimony that Mr. Batey was a part of this conversation with Mr. Quisneo or Mr. Finley, that there was any communication between Mr. Batey and these 2 individuals, or that they had any relationship. There's been no foundation for that. So whatever Mr. Quisneo purchased is...
Well, I think we should have just a quick hearing out. proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. And if the witness could be handed the item, please. Detective Gish, could you please take a look at that item and let me know if you recognize it?
I do.
And what is the item?
And this is a receipt that I recovered for an iPhone, a new iPhone, in Quizneo's room in California. And it was, like I said, it was dated on 7/8 of 2013. And so I recovered a couple of the...
But, Your Honor, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Your Honor, at this time I would ask that that receipt be entered as the next numbered exhibit.
All right, that would be number 35.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I'm sorry, Detective Gish, could you please continue?
Sure. So during the search warrant of Quizneo's house, in his car, his person, we recovered a couple of iPhones, one out of his room, I believe the other was in the car. The receipt was recovered from his bedroom that we just entered into evidence. And there was a MacBook Pro laptop that was in his room, and it was recovered as well. Of course, having all of this information and all of this data now, I've got at least 2 phones and there were some other things recovered as well. I believe there was an Xbox recovered, a second laptop computer recovered. It was an HP laptop. But now that we had this evidence, and I was taking all of this evidence under the seizure of the search warrant, I was taking it back to Nashville to process this evidence in our lab. I knew that Mr. Quizneo wouldn't be coming back with us. Of course, he wasn't under arrest. And at that time, I conducted an interview with Mr. Quizneo, with Detective Mayo. And he was asked certain questions. But certain questions that I asked Mr. Quizneo, important to the investigation, my investigation for the forensics part, was, number one, is the computer or the phone passcode protected?
What is that?
Well, with the encryption that we talked about yesterday with the iPhone, without having the passcode, there are facilities built into that phone that we could try. If a phone is locked, let's say the iPhone is locked with let's say a simple 4-digit passcode. If that passcode has the phone locked, there are ways that we can defeat that passcode. One would be called a brute force technique. And the brute force technique would be to connect this phone to one of our forensic platforms, this locked phone, and then that platform would try, if it was 4 digits, then there's actually 10,000 combinations. So there's 0000 through 9999. So of these 10,000 combinations, the forensic software would start trying every single combination at the time, starting at 000 and then 0001 until it unlocked the phone and found the correct passcode. In past times, that would work because the phone wouldn't lock. But since then, Apple has built in a security measure on their devices that after a certain number of attempts without putting in the correct passcode, the phone would be locked and basically turned into a brick where you can't get the evidence. Now, there are other ways to get evidence off of other phones, such as like a chip-off.
What do you mean by chip-off?
Well, on a chip-off is, we've talked about the memory on phones, and we've talked about hard drives briefly inside of a computer. But whereas a computer has a hard drive that's about this size that just slides inside of it, and this is the storage medium of the computer, the phone basically has a circuit board inside of it. And then inside on the circuit board, if you could visualize this, there's a lot of square chips soldered onto that circuit board. Well, so think about the chip, the silicon chip, is just like one of the small chips, the USB cards that you would put in and out of a phone. That's really the memory of a telephone. but that chip is soldered onto the board, and the back side of that chip that's soldered onto the board has a lot of little, they're not microscopic, but they're very small circular connectors. And those connectors are soldered to the circuit board, and that's how the data travels through the circuit board onto the chip of the phone. So iPhones and Androids today, if we were to strip this phone down to the circuit board, I would be able to show you the chip. And the chip is very, very thin, probably a 32nd of an inch thick, and it's no bigger than my thumbnail. And today's chips can hold at least 64 or 120 gigabyte worth of data. So an option would be on a telephone that was passcode protected, and I perform these operations daily in the police department on things other than an iPhone, such as an Android phone or a Motorola or a Nokia, would be to strip the phone down all the way to the circuit board and then use my training. This was a lot of training that I had to be able to complete this task, and then use extreme heat in certain chemicals and in heat at a certain temperature. So the temperature is usually not over 360 degrees Celsius, but that's a lot of heat. And then that heat in that certain chemicals after a minute or so will actually enable me to lift that chip off of that circuit board. So I have the chip now. So that's where all of the data is stored on the phone, is the chip. The next process of the chip off would be for me to put the chip under a microscope and start using special soldering irons and whatnot to clean off all of the excess solder and all of the epoxy that holds that chip on the board, to clean all of those contacts. So once I get the contacts really clean, there's a forensic platform and that we can use to put this chip inside of these different readers. And then we can actually extract all of the data off of this chip without the passcode. So basically, it's akin to doing a full extraction on a telephone without having to use the phone. So if an Android phone is locked with the passcode, or a Motorola, and the data on that chip is not encrypted, then I would be able to perform that process. And I've done it over 100 times in the last year and a half with the police department, and have recovered quite a bit of evidence in this fashion. And so,
Detective Gish, once that process is done, the extraction, do you ever go back and use that chip or use that device again?
no, the device would be destroyed at that point. The device would be no longer usable. And that's the trade-off with doing a chip off. In my experience with the police department, I've been doing these since November of 2014, I believe, is when I first started receiving training. I've done 135 chip-off procedures, and out of those 135, I have about a 90% success rate. So there is a possibility of destroying the chip. On the other hand, out of these 100 or more phones that I've completed, not one of them has been an iPhone. And the reason I say that is that the data on the chip, I could still do an iPhone the same way. I could still pull the chip off of the iPhone. I could clean the chip. I could get the chip prepared forensically to go into the reader and actually extract the whole 64 gigabyte of the chip. But the problem is, once I got the extraction completed, that data is encrypted. And what I mean by encrypted is when a user enters their passcode, all the data on my phone right now is encrypted. This is an iPhone. And all of the data stays encrypted on this phone until I enter my passcode, which unlocks the encryption. Us talking about that encryption key yesterday. So once I enter my passcode on this telephone, in simple terms, basically that engages the encryption key to unlock all of the data on the phone. So you have to have this encryption key, and that's why it was so important at the time that in my interview with Mr. Quiznio that I gained the passcode of his telephone.
And when you say telephone, which phone are you referring to?
That was his iPhone 5.
And Were you able to analyze the iPhone 5?
I was. He had told me that there wasn't a lot of information on this phone because Brandon Vandenburg had purchased this phone for him on the 8th of...
Your Honor, that would be hearsay.
Well,
You'd have no way to know that unless somebody told you. He hasn't stated he was there with them when it was purchased, so clearly hearsay, Your Honor.
all right.
Would you like to respond?
Okay, go ahead.
Your Honor, the state's position is that it's a statement of the co-conspirator in furtherance of the conspiracy to cover up the original crime.
Which it is.
Was this statement made specifically to Mr. Gish, Your Honor? There's no foundation for that. He could not have made it to Detective Mayo or Sergeant Shreve or someone, and unless Mr. Gish has actual knowledge of that, I still think it would be hearsay.
All right.
Your Honor, I'm happy to just move on.
Okay.
You said that you analyzed that phone.
I did.
You also said that there was another phone of Mr. Quinzio that was an iPhone 4 that was found in his vehicle. Did you, or I believe that's what you said, did you analyze that phone?
Yeah, and to correct the record, I think maybe it was an iPhone 4S. It was either a 4 or a 4S. We did so many phones in this case. But I think it was a 4S. And the difference is just the version of model that Apple puts out. Basically, those are kind of the same. But to answer your question, I did analyze that phone with forensic tools when I got the phone back to Nashville, Tennessee. And what I found on that phone was, from what I remember, is that it was set up to use more like, it didn't have phone service on it, and it was set up more to use like a music device. So like an iPod. I think it had a bunch of music on it. And in fact, yeah, that's what he told me. So.
And what, if anything else, did you analyze at Mr. Finley's house or from his person? What other devices did you have that you analyzed?
Well, there was a computer there as well. I stated that I recovered a MacBook computer. I believe it was from Quiznio's bedroom. The same round of questioning that I asked him about the phone having a passcode, I asked him the same thing with the computer. It's not nearly as important with the computer because by default at the time Apple did not encrypt their hard drives, but to make my job easier when I got to Nashville and probably not having access to Mr. Quiznio again, I found it prudent for me to ask him that, and he did tell me that it was passcode protected, the laptop, and supplied me.
To what Mr. Quinzio told him, same objection.
Here.
But he was all part of this matter, so I'm going to allow it.
And he supplied me with the passcode. When I got the computer back to the lab, didn't need the passcode anyway because the computer was not encrypted. But it was nice to have just in case it had been. I did power the computer on there. I said back to the lab, but after he gave me the passcode in the interview room there in the police department, I did at some point while still in California attempt to verify that that was the right passcode on the computer and powered that computer on and entered the passcode, and that was it.
And ultimately, when you got the computer back to your forensic lab here in Nashville, could you describe the process that you performed for your computer forensic analysis of that item?
Right. So we talked about yesterday afternoon how I extract a phone, and that when a detective or an investigator brings a phone to our office, that really the only way to analyze the device on a phone is to plug that live phone into the forensic machine or computer and let that computer extract all of the data on this phone. Now you know why, the court knows why you have to do that with the phone, because the only other option would be pulling this chip off that's non-removable when the phone is manufactured. So that's our only option, first option is to plug the phone in. computers are built somewhat different in that, and this is laptop that I'm speaking of here, so let's keep it in that sense. So when I say computer, I'm talking about laptop if I misspeak. Computers and laptops have hard drives inside of them, and like I said, the hard drives are about a little smaller than this phone for a laptop, and the hard drive is removable. So on a MacBook Pro, such as the same computer that I recovered from Mr. Quisnio, the hard drive is removed from that device by flipping the computer over and laying it on, so you can expose the bottom of the computer. And then there's several screws that we just take out, and we lift this aluminum panel up off of the computer, set the panel aside, and then exposed right there as soon as we lift the panel off is the actual 2.5-inch hard drive that's plugged into the data bus. So we remove the screws from the data bus and we remove the hard drive. Now, once we remove the hard drive, we plug the drive in to a forensic machine and we image that hard drive. Whereas we're pulling an extraction off of the phone, and we call that a forensic extraction, we call an image of a dead hard drive, and we call this dead device because it's not powered on. We pull it out of its computer. This is called a forensic image. There are some differences between the two. And so the next step would be, after getting the hard drive removed from the laptop computer, is the goal is to get every single bit. And when I say bit, I'm talking BIT, because data is described in computers as bits and bytes. So we want to get every bit and every byte of data off of this hard drive, from the first bit to the last bit. So the way that's completed is we connect the hard drive to the examination machine. Now, it's important to understand, and I'll use this metaphor with Windows again, that if a user takes a thumb drive and plugs it into a Windows machine or even a Mac machine, but assuming it's Windows, Windows just recognizes that immediately, constantly monitoring what devices are plugged in. The reason it does this is, once you plug this thumb drive into Windows, you start seeing boxes come up automatically, and Windows is telling the user, the computer's telling the user, hey, I just noticed you plugged something in. Would you like to copy pictures? Would you like to open files? It's really wanting you to do all of these things. But in forensics, that's bad. We don't want that to happen. And the reason we don't want that to happen is the thumb drive that I talked about, as soon as you plugged it into Windows, it would start making writes, possibly overwriting some of the original data that was on the drive. So to defeat any writes going from this original hard drive out of the computer to the examination machine, there's a bridge placed in between both. And the hard drive is actually plugged into this bridge, and this bridge is called a write blocking bridge. It's a hardware write blocking bridge. So as it's plugged in, Windows is used on the examination machine. You'll hear me explain EnCase here in a little while, and that's a Windows software. So what this write block bridge is doing is, it's actually, the computer is still sending writes to this drive because it recognized that something was plugged in. But this write blocking bridge tricks the computer and basically blocks any writes that would go to this original hard drive by inside of the write blocking bridge saying, yeah, that message made it, that message made it, that message made it. So we have no rights to this hard drive. Remember, this hard drive that we pulled out of the computer would be the original evidence. So just like a phone, when we power on a phone to get a data extraction, we dump all of the data or extract all of the data from the telephone. And then we bag this up, the original phone, put it back into the evidence bag. And then that evidence bag's given back to the detective for safe storage in the property room. Same thing happens.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Detective Gish, once you've done that process, the copy or extraction that you have, do you utilize that extraction, or when you're looking at things, are you going back to the actual device itself?
Right, and that's where I was going. The same thing happens on a hard drive. So once I get the forensic image of the hard drive's plugged right back into Quizneo's computer. The lid or the bottom is put back on his computer. It's sealed up, taken back to the property room for safekeeping. And then I work off of this forensic image that we just obtained. So we don't go back to the original image unless we had to. So this would be I guess, classified forensically as an original image that we would use.
Which you're putting to your phone, but you're saying the forensic image.
Yeah, the forensic image.
That becomes
Right.
the evidence that you're working with and that you're relying on.
Yeah, it's saved in a file, a huge file. If it's 64, if the hard drive is 128 gigabyte or 500 gigabyte or a terabyte, it's a whole terabyte image, because remember, we captured every single bit of this information, not only the allocated stuff that we talked about yesterday, but it's also capturing all of the deleted stuff, files that would be classified as unallocated space.
And did you do that with Mr. Quinzio's laptop?
I did.
And could you describe what, if anything, what process you used and what, if anything, that you found?
Right. When I started when I finished the forensic image, of course the drive was put back in the laptop and I was working off the forensic image. And I started analyzing the computer. And one of the first things that in my mind to look for at that point as an investigator, been doing this a long time, did these videos at all, even though that they were sent through iMessage, or that's what I thought at the time, that they were sent through some type of messaging applications, did they anything end up on this computer? And what I found is it was. I ended up recovering 5 videos of the incident that we saw yesterday. So, and it was 5 videos, but it was actually 3 incidents, but 2 of the videos were duplicates. So I found 3 of noticing the thumbnails that we saw yesterday of the live video thumbnails. And I believe when I was describing those thumbnails, on each one, if it was a thumbnail image, I described that as being a video thumbnail. That was the first frame in the video. And General Norman asked me, I know on 3 of them, if I recovered that from another device. And I said, yes, I did. I recovered it from another device. This would be those videos, and I recovered them from Joseph Quizneo's computer.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask to pass the witness what is a 3-page document as well as a disc. And defense counsel has already been provided with a copy. And Detective, do you recognize that 3-page document?
Yes, ma'am. It's a reports, that 3 individual reports that I created.
And what do the reports relate to?
The reports relate to each of the 3 videos that I recovered. From here on out, I'm going to say I recovered 3. I actually recovered 5, but 2 of them were duplicates. But there were 3 different videos. And each one of these sheets detail metadata. And metadata is, I guess, defined as additional data. It's referred to as EXIF data. That's the acronym. And it stands for Exchangeable Image File Format. Most images and videos today in modern devices all have metadata or EXIF data attached to them. That's done automatically by the device.
And is that video files as well as a picture file and image?
Mostly all video files, mostly all image files like JPEGs have metadata associated with them. I'm going to say that not all video files do, but all video files that are created on an Apple device that are in .mov format all have metadata and XF information associated with them. That's the way Apple wrote their software. So whenever a video is taken or whenever a picture is taken, we would expect the picture to be a picture of whatever the camera lens was pointed at and focused on at the time. And that's true. That's what we see whenever we double click on a picture or open a picture up after we take the picture or the video. But underneath the hood, what's going on is Apple's writing, you know, when the picture is taken or the video button is pushed, Apple is, or the phone, Apple Corporation who developed this, is writing all of these colors to a file. And it may say, when you look at this raw data, there's a bunch of raw data here, and it may mean put this shading of blue up on this axis point of the screen. And so that's how the picture is created. It's created with raw data, but the data is telling the image how to show up on the screen. So that's what we would expect to see is the image when you open it up. But right before the image, so if you're looking at the raw data of an image file, the first section, like yesterday we talked about the file header, how we can file carve. That first 4 or 5 different characters or the bytes of every file of a JPEG picture is YOYA, or of a AVI file is RIFF, where there's a standard written. So right after this small character of the original file signature comes the metadata. So when the camera button is pushed to either take the picture or the video, it writes all of this metadata at that point. And then right below the metadata, it writes the actual picture file or the video file below it. So there's, when I found the 3 videos.
I'm sorry. And Detective Gish, if I can stop you there, just to follow up on what you've just been testifying about, does this same thing happen on a digital camera?
It does. There's a standard on any format, and this format would be .jpeg for a picture. So before this digital standard is written, there is a conglomeration throughout the world that that votes or devises how this standard is going to be for a certain format. So yes, it's on all JPEG pictures and pretty much every .mov movie file that I've seen.
Which you've just described the 3-page document. I had also handed you a disc. Do you recognize the disc?
I do. This is a disc that of the recovered images. I'm sorry, strike that. It's a disc of the recovered 3 video files that I recovered off of Quizneo's computer from his iMessages folder, and there is an iMessage folder on the computer as well. And I believe I've saved them on this disc. I did. I saved them as regular speed, and the videos not only have the video but included audio, and then to maybe for easier viewing for the court, I put them at 50% speed, so half speed.
And Your Honor, at this time I would ask that the 3-page document as well as the disc be entered into evidence as the next numbered exhibit.
36.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I also ask permission to publish these items to the jury.
All right.
Thank you.
I have to provide a quick instruction to the witness, just so that the witness isn't confused.
Okay.
Detective Gish, I'm going to be putting on a video file, but only putting on one version of the video file for each video. So on the first video file that you recovered, it will be played at 50%, the second video file 50%, and then the third video file will be played at the full speed. Does that make sense? Which I am going to put
Can I
up.
ask a question? So we don't have to play this, am I supposed to narrate what I see for the record?
Yeah, I'll ask you to describe it when we get to that point. Which again, there were 3 documents that were included, and you have already generally described the documents. I have just placed the first document on the screen. If you could describe what's shown here and give the pertinent information.
Right. This is the XF information that was recovered, the metadata from the first recorded file. And if we see at the top of it, what I want you to notice where it says complete name, and then we go over to the right and we see what I was talking about yesterday, how files are named with the iPhone. We see the file name is image_1398.mov. And when I recovered this file from Quizneo's laptop, what was important to note is that that sequence number right there, with us talking about image gaps yesterday, was in that gap of missing images or videos during the time frame of the incident. And then the format we see that is an MPEG-4. That's just a video codecing format that's used. There's different type of formats that are used on different type of video files, but with this version of the .movie file, that's what Apple's using. It really doesn't have any bearing on what we're going to see or how the video is saved or anything of that. That's just telling us the format of the video. The profile is the QuickTime profile. QuickTime, again, is a proprietary player or viewer built by Apple, kind of like Windows Media Player is proprietary to Windows and developed by them. The codec ID we see is QT, and then we see the file size. And this file size is in megabytes. And to explain megabytes, we know that there's megabytes and then there's gigabytes. You've heard me talk plenty this week on gigabytes. So that's it is in megabytes. So we see that it's 2.20 megabytes. The duration is 12 seconds. Well, basically, if you round up, it's 13 seconds because we see the hundredths of the milliseconds there at 753. So it's over 12 seconds. The bit rate, that's just another video codecing. And then what we see there is UTC, we see the recorded date. And if you look, the recorded date says that it was recorded at 6/23 of 2013 at 2:35 in the morning. And now, remember, this came off of Quizneo's computer, and Quizneo's computer was set to Pacific Daylight Time. But when that video file was created, that video file was created from Vandenburg's cell phone. Vandenburg's cell phone was set to Central Daylight Time, which that's the time that it's in. When that video was sent via iMessage to Mr. Quizno, that metadata is already cached inside of there. That metadata doesn't change at all. So that's from when the shutter button was pushed to take the video from Vandenburg's phone. And then we see the encoded date there at the bottom. And we notice that UTC acronym again that I said I would explain. UTC is actually an acronym that stands for Universal Coordinated Time. I don't know why it's not UCT, but it's UTC. And a quick explanation of that would be, in our society, we use the Gregorian calendar, or the Western calendar, or the Christian calendar. That's all the same calendar that we use. When we use this calendar, there has to be a baseline of time, because our calendar deals in minutes, seconds, hours, days, weeks, months, and years. Well, so time has to start somewhere on this baseline for the Gregorian calendar. And that time starts at the prime meridian. And the prime meridian is the longitude of 0 degrees. And if longitude is basically an angular, it's the vertical lines that we see on the globe. And that's the angular distance in minutes, seconds, and degrees, either east or west of that longitude. So prime meridian runs through England, Greenwich, England. So that's where we say time starts, right on this prime meridian.
Detective Gish, is it unusual to see UTC's time associated with XIF data and or computers?
No, all computers use UTC time. It's up to the device to convert that time to the local time that we view, like we see 2:35 in the morning at the top. The actual computer calculated the offset from UTC. So if the prime meridian runs through Greenwich, England, and we moved to the west towards North America and the United States, we have to go through the different time zones. So as you get to our time zone here, well, as you get to time zone, we're at -5 hours from the prime meridian. If you were to be in the Pacific time zone, even going further west, you would be at -7 hours from the prime meridian. If you travel east from the prime meridian, you have to add hours. So when you look at the timestamp and you see that it's -5 hours, that phone of Vandenberg's created that correct offset because his phone was set to Central Daylight Time.
And that is important because this was recovered from Mr. Quinzio's computer, correct?
That's correct. It's very important because Quizneo's computer was set to Pacific Standard Time.
Detective Gish, I have the video queued up of this first video file that you have described from 2:35:15, and this is the video played back at the slower speed. You have viewed it at full speed, is that correct?
I have.
And there is audio connected with it, correct?
There is.
If you could describe what's being seen and describe what you know about this video file.
Well, this is the victim laying on the hallway with that white paper there in Gillette Hall. It appears this is the same video that Vandenburg was taking that we see from the surveillance video. Her skirt's been removed or pulled up. We see Brandon Banks there taking a picture of her private areas. See the white piece of paper there. I mean, she's not moving, she's not twitching. Her arms are twisted over her body, her hair's everywhere. And in the audio of this one, I remember it being Brandon Vandenburg saying, my phone's about motherfucking dead right now. My phone's about motherfucking dead.
And I have placed what has been entered as 36B on the screen. Could you describe what is shown in this image?
We see the complete name at the top again, and if you look all the way to the right of the screen, this file that I recovered from Quizneo's laptop is named image_1400.mov. This was also in that image gap or that sequence of missing images that had been deleted during the time frame. What's important here, we've already explained what UTC time is. It's the same formatting, but if you go down and we looked at the recorded date, again we see that this file, this video file, was recorded on June the 23rd of 2013 at 2:40 in the morning.
And again, you've gone into an explanation that that time is Central Time and was created by Mr. Vandenburg's phone. Is that correct?
Right, and since you added that, if you look down, and one thing I forgot to describe on the first one, I didn't go through all of these entries, but we see the make and the model of the phone there. And the make is Apple, and the model says iPhone 4S. That was the make and model of Vandenburg's phone. And those tags, metadata tags, are also put on every picture or every video. And just remember, it's just not these videos that this metadata is attached to. It's any image or any video that that phone would have taken.
Detective Gesh, I'm queuing up the second video file on Exhibit 36D, which I guess it's technically the fourth, because this is the second video, which is IMG_1400, and this is at 50% playback. If you could describe what is shown in this image.
Yes, this is the victim laying on the floor of the dorm room. We see Cory Batey's hand there. You saw him in his shirt earlier. She's passed out, not twitching. In fact, you saw his right hand and his finger inserted into her anus.
What appeared to be,
Yeah, but what appeared to be his finger inserted into her anus. And then if you notice when he pulled out his finger back from her buttocks region, that it appeared to be he was pressing so hard that there was a handprint left right there from his fingers on her left buttocks area. And her underwear, again, had been pulled down.
Detective Gesh, I have just placed on the screen 36C. Could you describe what is shown in this image?
Same sort of information that we've described on the last two. The complete name. If you go over from the file path, we'll see the original file name there. And that one is IMG_1401.mov. That again was in the same image gap sequence of deleted images from Vandenburg's phone. This is a 41-second video, 41 and a half seconds. The recorded date on this video was 6/23 of 2013. We see that right there. And then we see the time is 2:40 in the morning.
Is it specifically 2:40 and 50 seconds?
It is. It's, yes, 2:40 and 50 seconds in the morning. And the make and the model, again, is the Apple iPhone 4S.
Detective Gish, I've just queued up this third video, which will be the fifth video file on Exhibit 36D, and this is at full speed. I guess we'll let it play, and then maybe at the end of it, if you can describe.
Squeeze that shit. Squeeze that shit. I can't have this shit, bro. You ain't even hard, bro.
Detective Gish, could you describe kind of the information that you gleaned from this video as part of the investigation and how it related to all of the images that you recovered?
It was basically a snapshot of what I'd seen through all of the thumbnails thus far that I had recovered. And what we saw there was the victim laying on the floor of the dorm room. She had her underwear pulled down, her skirt was pulled up, she was motionless, there was laughing and cutting up going on. We hear somebody mention, squeeze that shit, referring to a bottle that we saw that appeared to be inserted into her anus. At that point, we saw Brandon Banks with his bracelets on his right hand twist and squeeze that bottle. As that was going on and the bottle was twisted and squeezing by Mr. Banks, you didn't see her move at all. As they're talking about going back to tin roof, the video camera kind of pans away, and during that video you can see the pants of Mr. Vandenburg. They're still on him. You see his thumb in the video. You see Banks' pants in the video. And then near the end of the video, we see what appears, it's Mr. Batey appearing to have sex with the victim. And he's holding his region down in near his groin, and he's mounted up to her right where her vagina would be. And we hear laughing and cutting up, and they're still talking about tin roof, or going back to tin roof. And then we hear someone say on there, "You ain't even hard, bro."
Detective Gish, I'm going to hand you an item. This has previously been provided to defense counsel. If you could take a look at that and let me know if you recognize it. And what is that?
When I recovered all of the 5 videos, remember I said that I recovered 3 with an image sequence that was image 1398, 1400, and 1401. And that was the image sequence that was missing from Vandenburg's phone during the time. But then I also recovered duplicate images of 2 of those videos. Duplicate videos of 2 of those videos, not just the images. And we see that those duplicate videos are named _ 791 and 792. And I took a screenshot of this to show that these images were duplicate.
Stop you just so that we can see that while you're talking about it. Did you create that report as part of the investigation?
I did.
Your Honor, I would ask that that be admitted as the next numbered exhibit.
Can we see the report, Your Honor?
Sure.
Ms. Norman did provide us some documents today, but I don't know what she's referring to at this time. Yeah, she gave us this morning, Your Honor.
All right.
Your Honor, I would ask that that be entered as the next numbered exhibit.
37.
Thank you, Your Honor. And may I also publish that to the jury? May I publish? Yes. Thank you. Detective Gish, again, I apologize for interrupting you. The image will be placed on the screen, and if you can continue describing what is shown.
So when I recovered the videos, I extracted them out of that forensic image that I took from Quizneo's computer, and I saved them over.
Your Honor, this is cumulative. We've seen the thumbnails ask that they take these down. He can talk about what he's done. And
All right. All right, I mean, I believe we have seen those, haven't we? We saw the videos, right?
yes,
Okay.
they were introduced yesterday.
All right, I'll sustain your objection.
Detective Gish, if you could explain this information without the image.
Yeah, on the first two images, I think it was 1791, 1792. That was the image sequence. Remember, the iPhone will automatically name the images. The other three images were 1398, 1399, I think, and 1400. Those came off of Vandenburg's phone.
Your Honor, if we may, could Exhibit 37 be handed back to Detective Gish since we're not going to be publishing it to the jury while he's testifying about it?
Thank you.
Detective Gish, just for the record, to be specific, the first two file names, because again, you're explaining that 5 video files were found on Mr. Quinzio's computer. What were the first two file names?
Image underscore 0791 and image underscore 0792.
And then 3, 4, and 5?
Image underscore 1398, image underscore 1400, and image underscore 1401.
And could you explain why that was significant?
It was very significant because there were duplicate copies of 2 of these videos on that computer. And the screenshot was created to show the original file names here.
And could you also explain kind of the significance at the time that you're finding this in the investigation?
Sure. As I'm finding these these videos, I found these videos on Quizneo's computer in his iMessaging. Computers and laptops with Apple can also message back and forth. So it was under his iMessage database. And so when I started going through Quizneo's laptop computer, I found the full version of the timeline conversation that he was having that I found on Vandenburg's phone. So the references to rape, the evidence of FaceTime, and the, yeah, I didn't have the call log, but those. So this was significant in that.
Your Honor, I would like to enter an objection on references to rape. And there's no foundation for that. That might not even be something that's been admissible, that might be admissible later. So just loosely referring to that term
All right.
I object to that because there's no foundation that would
All right.
be admissible later.
All right, sustain.
May I respond?
Yes, you may.
Detective Gish is describing the digital evidence that he located. He's not testifying to any type of hearsay. He's just describing the digital evidence and how it affected his forensic analysis of the data in this case, because he's verifying information from one phone to the next phone.
I understand that, but I think the objection was with the references he made to rape. That's what I sustain. And he can describe what he found, sure.
So I found iMessages describing some.
Did you find the data, the same data from Mr. Vandenberg's phone on Mr. Quinzio's phone?
I did, on his laptop.
And when only 2 videos had file names that were created by Mr. Quinzio's computer, was that of any concern to you?
It was much concern.
And why is that?
Because when I started analyzing even further after the timeline of 6/23 of Mr. Quisneo's computer, I found a message conversation between Quisneo and Vandenburg where it was asked that Quisneo send back two of these, or send back the videos.
Objection to the hearsay there. Need to make that.
Well,
record.
I mean, I think we've dealt with this issue previously.
For the record.
Right, I understand. Go ahead.
So I found a text message conversation between Quisneo and Vandenburg, and this occurred 3 days after the incident on the 26th. And the content of that messaging was from Vandenberg's number asking that he return, or if Joey Quisneo still had those videos, and that if he did, send those videos back to Vandenburg on the 26th. So
Detective Gish, were you able to determine how many videos were sent back?
there were only 2 sent back.
And that is significant in your investigation. Could you explain why?
Right, it's very significant because I know 3 were sent on the 23rd and to Quisneo, and only 2 were sent back on the 26th to Vandenburg by Quisneo.
And the third video that again was not duplicated, was there anything different about the messaging of how that video was originally sent?
There was. When these videos first came to Quisneo during this time frame from Vandenburg, these 3 videos, there were 2 different sets of messages that Vandenburg used. So with iMessaging, you can have something called group messaging. So if I was going to iMessage myself and 3 people in my unit, they would be all a part of that group conversation, and I could send them a picture and they would all 3 get it. But then if I wanted to include other people in that group, it would be a completely different message conversation. So I found it was significant because during the timeline in the communication Vandenburg was having on his phone inside that room, he sent 2 different group messages to iMessage. One that included Quisneo and Miles Finley, and the set that had 2 videos in it, and a second group message that included Miles Finley, Joey Quisneo, Chris Boyd, and Austin Carter Samuels. And that had 1 video in it.
And Detective Gish, the video thumbnails that you've testified about previously, is there XIF data attached to those that will give you the timestamp and other information?
No. It's just a copy. When Apple makes the thumbnail, when the shutter button is pushed and the picture's created or the video's created, as we know, it creates thumbnail images. It creates the image, but there's no XF data attached to that thumbnail image like there is the original.
And Detective Gish, based on your training and experience, any time that a photograph is taken with a digital camera, you as a computer forensic analyst, mobile device analyst, would you be able to determine XIF data on that image if you were able to view a digital copy?
Absolutely.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask to pull up an image to show to Detective Gish.
Your Honor, can we view this independently?
Do you have a hard copy of it?
Well, no, the purpose is for him to view the digital copy so that he can explain what, if any, XIF data is on the digital copy.
Well, I think the defense has a concern about what image is being brought up, that's all.
Sure, and I'm happy to show the defense counsel if they'd like to step over real quickly. And actually, for the record, Your Honor, the image I'm referring to has already been entered into evidence by Detective Mayo.
All of them?
Huh?
All of these have already been entered in the evidence?
Oh, yes, they're exhibits.
Can I just look at the rest? Because it looked like there were maybe 4 or 5.
Right, it's just these are
Okay.
the photos entered by Detective Mayo on his direct examination.
Okay. No objection, Your Honor.
All right.
Detective Gish, I'm opening this folder which contains 6 images which have previously been entered as exhibits in the trial. And this last image, could you explain again, based on your training and experience, what, if anything, can be done with this digital image to determine if there's XIF data attached to this photo?
Well, as I stated earlier, every JPEG image that's ever been created here recently, modern, it all has this digital XF data attached to it. So that data is written to the image of that image, to the digital data. And in fact, if you was to right-click that image, I guess, right-click, I don't know what software platform you're using, and hit Properties, what's happening before you hit well, that's fine. What's happening is that picture viewer is viewing that XF information that's written to that digital image, just like the XF information that we just saw on the videos. And it's pulling that XF information and presenting that to you in the Properties section. And there's simple programs as well that you can buy, even on iPhones and Androids or whatever, that XF viewer. So any picture that you ever took, you can have an XF viewer and it will scan that digital image, the content of that digital image, and tell you the information. And not only date and time stamps, I mean, a lot of the newer phones now have GPS receivers in them. So when you snap a picture, not only are the date and time written there, but the GPS coordinates of where you were standing when you took that picture is written into there.
And again, I right-clicked and Properties came up, details, and so any layperson is able to locate this information. This is not a scientific process, is that correct?
No, that's the purpose that Windows puts the Property tab in there for the user.
And can you note the date taken of this photograph?
If I can approach the screen, I can't see it at all.
Can't see that well.
No, sir.
Okay, please.
And for the record, Your Honor, the photograph that I've been referring to is Exhibit 13B.
This picture was created on 6/28 of 2013 at 10:01 p.m. And that would be the date, not where it was created on your computer. That would be when the shutter button is pushed on the camera. It would be different than when it was created on the computer or copied to the computer. That's the original date when the shutter button was pressed to record that image.
Thank you. And Detective Gish, obviously you have been testifying about multiple devices that you analyzed as part of your investigation. At some point, did you analyze the mobile device of the victim in this case?
Yeah, she had an iPhone, and I analyzed it on, I know it was July the 8th of 2013.
Now I am going to hand you what is a 4-page document, and defense counsel has been provided with a copy of it. If you can take a look at that and let me know if you recognize it.
I do.
And what is that?
This is a report that I created using the Oxygen forensic software of an event log off of the victim's phone. And it was created, the report was created on July the 30th of 2014. And the phone was actually processed, like I said, originally extracted on July the 8th of 2013.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask to admit the 4th page of that document as the next numbered exhibit, and if the additional 3 pages could just be marked for ID.
All right.
And I would also request permission to publish the 4th page to the jury.
We'll be taking a break in about 5 minutes.
And Detective Gish, I believe that your report is on 1 page, but just so that possibly it can be more easily seen, it's been put into 2 different screens for the image. Do you recognize what's shown on the screen?
Yeah, this is an event log off of the victim's cell phone.
And when you were creating this report, did you create it for a specific timeline?
Whatever I was requested to do, yes.
And could you describe what's shown, kind of the timeline of events and this call log, how you created this?
So you can see that.
Thank you.
Apologize.
Yes, to describe it, on the left side, you'll notice that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These rows depict events of that phone, and these events would be what was happening on that phone in a timeline format. You see that number 1 is an outgoing call. You see the type of call is a voice call. We see who the call was to at that 918 area code number. The central day CDT, that stands for Central Daylight Time, so that offset from UTC has already been converted for us by the phone itself. And the duration of the call is 40 seconds. And then on the right side we see deleted, and it says yes. And you can recover some deleted things from an iPhone if they're in a database.
And could you describe the second entry?
It was a missed call. We say it's a voice call, and it was from Jake Bernstein, and it was on 6/23 of 2013 at 2:55 in the morning, and it was also deleted recovered.
And the third call?
It's an outgoing voice call to Jake Bernstein, and this call was completed on 6/23 of 2013 at 7:54 a.m. The duration is 6 seconds, and it's been deleted recovered.
Now I'm going to show the second half of that report. And could you just generally describe what is shown here?
Yeah, incoming, outgoing, missed calls. We see who they're from, the duration. If it's either an incoming or outgoing call, there's a duration listed. And then in the very right column, we see it was deleted but recovered by the software.
Thank you. Detective Gish, I apologize, I feel like I've just jumped around in the timeline a little bit, but you had testified about everything that was found on Mr. Quinzio's devices. You had also mentioned that when you went to California that Mr. Miles Finley was someone that you had obtained search warrants for. Could you describe what, if anything, you located regarding Mr. Finley?
Right. As I testified to earlier, Quinzio was the first location that we traveled to, Detective Mayo and I and the Riverside detectives, to complete the search warrant. Mr. Finley was second on our list. So I arrived at Mr. Finley's house to execute the search warrant. He was not there, but his brother was there. I impressed upon him the reason we were there, the reason we flew all the way to the location. The brother is who I was talking to at the time. And that it would be a good idea for this investigation if Mr. Finley would travel back to the house to interview with us. He was hesitant and did not want to come back. So I asked the brother to call him back and let me talk to Mr. Finley on the telephone. So that was done. I made contact through the telephone with Mr. Finley. Mr. Finley said he wasn't coming back at that time. And I told him that was fine, that if he didn't want to talk to us, but I still was going to complete this search warrant at his house, which was also his parents' house, and that The judge of the search warrant had authorized me to seize each and every digital device inside that house. And that was taking place and ongoing as I was talking to him on the phone. He decided that he did want to come back. When he pulled up, I met Mr. Finley at the driveway with Detective Mayo. He got out of the car. At that time, I secured his person and removed a cell phone from his person, and it was an iPhone. When I removed the iPhone, I hit the button to determine if it was powered on, and immediately it came up into what we call and what is known as post-wipe mode. Mr. Finley had told me he had just wiped that phone, and the reason was his reason was there were images on that phone.
Well, again, he was a part of this whole matter, so he can testify.
And Mr. Finley, at that time, when I asked why he had wiped his phone of possible evidence on here of an aggravated rape, and he told me that he wiped his phone because there may have been inappropriate images of he and his girlfriend.
What happens to a phone when you wipe it?
And that's where I'm going with the good question. When the iPhone is wiped, it's, remember the encryption key, the only thing that happens when an iPhone is wiped, if you was to go to your phone and travel down and navigate to the reset phone setting, and you hit, in the actual tab says reset phone and erase all data. That's what it says there on the iPhone. If you were to select that and put your passcode in, the only thing that happens is the encryption key or keys for all of that data are completely blown out. The data is not overwritten, but it doesn't need to be overwritten because remember, all that data on iPhone's encrypted. Nobody can access that data. So it's a completely brick device in terms of forensic analysis at that point, and no information was gained off of that phone. It was seized, and I brought it back to Nashville, and I processed the device. But
Did you locate a laptop that belonged to Mr. Finley?
Okay, let's stop at this point and take our break, and we'll pick up there after the break, okay?
All rise.
Will be in a 15-minute recess.
Mr. Gibbs, want me to get you some more coffee before we come on?
after,
Okay.
yes, I'll have something to wet my throat because this talking is, whew.
I'll bring it in when I come in.
Thank you, sir.